Professor, welcome back. A good question would be, if the Earth did endure a full exchange between the U.S. and Russia, how long might it take, or would it ever recover and be habitable again? And if so, how long?
Well, I think from what I can understand myself, what would happen was it would be like a mass extinction event, similar to when the best example is when a meteorite hit the Earth, and that was when the dinosaurs were wiped out about 66 million years ago. They know that an asteroid, a metallic asteroid about 6 miles in diameter, hit the Yucatan Peninsula, and when it hit, it threw up enough heated material into that when it came down, it actually heated the upper atmosphere to 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit, created temperatures at surface level about 600 degrees, 700 degrees. It set all the forests of the world on fire, and it was they call it impact winter. It was so dark that you could have held your hand in front of your face and you wouldn't have seen it. Now, that's worse than what a nuclear war would do in terms of the atmospheric effects. But the result was that like 70% of all the species on Earth got wiped out, and no animals larger than probably a squirrel lived. So, we're looking at something that's analogous to that. And I think the sad thing is the people that are in charge need to understand that they can't go live in a shelter underground for 10 or 20 years and expect to come out. If you're in an environment where there's very few, if any, animals left and the forests have been destroyed, that's not really habitable when you're at the top of the food chain. So I think that's why I think we have to look at this we have to somehow come to grips with this as a species problem, and we have to think of nuclear war as a mass extinction event as opposed to, we talk about destroying civilization and all. Well, those sorts of catastrophes are almost incomprehensible, but yet they're still survivable. But extinction is quite permanent by definition.
It is, yes.
And that's why I think that's why I resent when we get feedback from the White House saying, we went, I didn't, but some of the people in a group I work with, PSR, went and talked to John Holdren, Obama's advisor, shortly after Obama was first elected. And they were told that, well, we think that if the prompt effects of nuclear war don't prevent war from happening, then the long-term effects aren't really that important. Well, they certainly are important. For example, if you live in a country that's not involved in the war, it's not even in the target area, but all your people are going to starve to death as a result. Yeah,
it was going to actually be my next question. You recall the movie On the Beach, right, of course?
Yes. Actually, I spoke in Melbourne.
Really?
On Hiroshima Day, and that they had me, somebody came up and talked to me about that.
Yeah, so I always wondered, was it realistic in that the southern hemisphere would not be extinguished immediately? However, the eventual effects would get them. And essentially that movie was within the realm of accurate?
That movie focused on radioactivity, basically.
Right. That's right.
And, if we have a war where they bomb all the nuclear power plants and put immense amounts of this long-lived radioactive, ionizing radiation into the atmosphere, and God only knows what that, that to me is almost unthinkable. But what we're talking about really with the studies that we talk about with the smoke and the blocking the light and the cold, that there would be a lesser degree of light being blocked in the southern hemisphere, but they predict like 35 to 40%. But still, there's going to be such a global cooling effect that for all practical purposes it won't matter. It might not be quite as dark and not quite as cold, but you still won't be able to grow any food. And, I asked one of the scientists about this, and they said, well, there may be some people at the equator that might survive. But, I have an article in the Federation of American Scientists that's going to be published this month called Nuclear War, Nuclear Winter, and Human Extinction. And the point I try to make is that I don't think it's worth getting into an academic debate about whether or not all the people would be killed, but just the fact that there's a good chance that they would be, to me, is enough. That should be a fairly powerful, enough of a motivation to at least publicly acknowledge and discuss this.